What happens when a loudmouth liberal tries to come for one of the sharpest young conservatives in America? They get embarrassed. Publicly. Brutally. And the whole internet watches it happen. That's exactly what went down when Jasmine Crockett thought she could ambush Karoline Leavitt live on TV. But what Jasmine didn't expect was that Karoline came loaded with facts, receipts, and the kind of confidence you only get when you're holding the truth. By the end of this segment, it wasn't Karoline who was flustered. It was Jasmine. And the backfire? It was glorious. It started like it always does. Another friendly liberal news network. Another scripted setup to embarrass the conservative guest. Another Democrat grinning like they already won. But this time? They picked the wrong target. Sitting across from the host that night was Jasmine Crockett, Democrat from Texas, the queen of smug one-liners and MSNBC soundbites. Jasmine's whole brand was being loud, fiery, and unapologetically anti-everything Republican. And honestly, she was pretty good at it, usually. But tonight wasn't going to be one of those nights. Because across from her sat Karoline Leavitt. And Karoline didn't come to play games. She came to win. It was one of those heavily produced cable segments, slick lighting, perfect hair, expensive suits, fake smiles. You know the type. The host was practically drooling at the setup. Jasmine Crockett, rising star of the progressive movement, versus Karoline Leavitt, the bold young conservative they all thought they could humiliate. The question was predictable. Karoline, Jasmine here says that your party is pushing lies to scare Americans. Care to respond? Classic setup. Softball to the liberal. Trap for the conservative. But Jasmine couldn't wait for the answer. Oh, I'm sorry, are you going to tell us about the good old days again, Karoline? Jasmine interrupted, with that fake laugh and exaggerated eye roll, already rehearsing her Twitter applause lines. About how Trump is some kind of savior. Please, the host chuckled politely, pretending to hide their grin. You could almost hear the MSNBC producers high-fiving in the control room. They thought they were about to embarrass Karoline on national TV. They forgot who they were dealing with. Karoline didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Didn't even look at the cameras. She stared straight at Jasmine. And with a calm, deliberate voice that cut sharper than anything shouted, she delivered the first blow. Jasmine, I know you think yelling over me makes you sound smart, but all it's doing is reminding everyone why Americans are tuning out your party in record numbers. Boom. Right hook. Landed. Jasmine blinked, her mouth slightly open for just a split second, not long enough for most people to notice, but long enough for everyone who knows politics to realize. She wasn't ready for that. Karoline kept going, steady, deadly accurate. You say conservatives are the ones spreading fear? Jasmine, your entire career is built on fear. Every speech you give, every campaign email, every soundbite you post, it's all about scaring people. Scare them about the Supreme Court. Scare them about conservatives. Scare them about parents showing up at school board meetings. And when anyone pushes back? Karoline added, leaning slightly forward, eyes locked on Jasmine, you don't debate them. You don't engage. You call them extremists. Silence. Even the host shifted awkwardly in their chair. The trap they set? It just flipped. But Karoline wasn't even breathing hard yet. She wasn't loud. She wasn't angry. That's what made it so much worse. It was cold. Calculated. Lethal. Jasmine tried to laugh it off, glancing over at the host for backup. But that crack in her voice gave it away. She could feel it, the segment was starting to slip out of her hands. And Karoline wasn't even done yet. Because next, she was going to bring the receipts. And the backfire was going to be glorious. Jasmine Crockett thought she had this one in the bag. Big network. Friendly host. Pre-planned talking points. But now? She was scrambling. That fake confidence was fading fast. The usual eye rolls and snarky one-liners that played well on social media were falling flat against Karoline's calm, controlled facts. But Karoline wasn't done yet. Not even close. "You want to talk about fear?" Karoline said, finally turning toward the host for a moment, then back to Jasmine. "Let's talk about the real fear tactics." Boom. She pulled out the receipts. "In your last campaign speech, Jasmine, you said Republicans were going to destroy democracy because we want voter ID. That's not protecting democracy, Jasmine. That's basic security. You need an ID to buy cough syrup. You don't need one to vote for the leader of the free world." The audience shifted. Even some of the studio crew were watching now, eyes widening, hands tightening on their earpieces. "And how about when you told Americans they'd lose their freedoms if we secured the border?" Karoline continued, her tone sharp, but never shouting. "Are you serious right now? You're sitting in luxury behind security guards while our working-class families deal with drugs, crime, and human trafficking coming across that border." Another hit. Direct. Personal. Undeniable. Jasmine opened her mouth, ready to jump in with one of her usual rehearsed lines, but Karoline cut her off before she even started. No, you've been talking enough." Oof. The entire mood shifted right there. The host, clearly sweating now, tried to steer it back. "Let's try to keep this respectful," but the audience didn't care. They were watching a political KO in real time. "And by the way," Karoline added, leaning in slightly, "since you're so concerned about protecting democracy, how about we stop censoring Americans on social media who disagree with your party's narrative?" Bang. Another direct hit. Jasmine Crockett, still holding onto that microphone like a life raft, tried desperately to recover. She gave a nervous laugh, that shaky politician laugh everyone knows by now, the one that says, "I'm in trouble, but maybe if I smile, no one will notice." Too late. By this point, the chat on X, Twitter, was already lighting up. Jasmine just got cooked on her own show. Karoline didn't come to play. She came to win. This is why we love Karoline Leavitt. Even the liberal trolls were oddly silent. They didn't have clips ready. They didn't have witty comebacks. They were watching their girl get dismantled, with receipts, on live TV. What made it even worse for Jasmine was that Karoline never raised her voice once. She didn't need to. Facts are louder than shouting. And Jasmine? She just realized she walked right into one of the biggest backfires of her career. What she thought would be a headline for her followers had just become Karoline's victory lap. But this wasn't even the peak yet. The worst was still coming. And when Karoline dropped her final bombshell, the whole country was going to hear it. By now, everyone in that studio could feel it. The cameras kept rolling, the lights still burning bright, but the energy? It had flipped completely. Jasmine Crockett had walked onto that set thinking she was about to embarrass Karoline Leavitt. Instead, she was fighting for air. Grasping for talking points. Smiling like everything was fine, but behind those eyes? Panic. And then Karoline dropped the hammer. "You want to talk about who's lying to the American people," she said, cool as ice. "Fine. Let's talk about that student loan forgiveness plan your party pushed." Boom. Everyone sat up a little straighter. "You stood in front of cameras and told hard-working Americans that student debt was just going to magically disappear, didn't you?" Karoline asked, eyebrow raised, sharp as a blade. "What you didn't tell them was that those debts weren't erased. They were dumped on the very people you claim to fight for." The audience could feel it now. This wasn't just a debate anymore. This was an autopsy. "And what about inflation?" Karoline fired next. "While you're busy calling conservatives extremists, the seniors watching this right now can't even afford groceries the way they could 4 years ago. But please, tell us again how everything's fine. You live in DC luxury. They live on fixed incomes." Silence. Not a sound from Jasmine. Not a sound from the host. Even the usual background hum of the production crew seemed to disappear. It was surgical. Jasmine, still gripping her mic, tried to cut back in, her voice raised, eyes wide. You don't know what you're talking about. Republicans are the reason people can't afford, but Karoline wasn't having it. She cut through her like a hot knife through butter. Stop. No yelling. Just that deadly calm again. You sit here pretending to represent the people, Karoline said sharply, but you don't represent anyone but your donors, your party bosses, and whatever activist group wrote your latest tweet. I represent the parents, the truckers, the small business owners, the retired veterans who actually built this country. Fire. That's when the chat exploded. Someone get the paramedics, she's not getting back up. Karoline just ended Jasmine's whole career in 30 seconds flat. This is the clip of the year. Meanwhile, the host sat frozen like a substitute teacher in the middle of a classroom fight, too afraid to get in between. Jasmine tried to speak, but every word she pushed out just sounded weaker. It didn't matter how loud she got, it just didn't hit anymore. Why? Because now, everyone watching knew the truth. The whole segment had turned into exactly what Jasmine feared most, a national moment of embarrassment, and it had her name written all over it. But Karoline wasn't finished yet. No, she had one more blow lined up. Something that would leave not just Jasmine, but the entire liberal media machine scrambling for damage control. The moment was coming. And once it landed, there was no going back. By this point, everyone watching knew exactly what they were seeing, a live, on-air meltdown. Not from Karoline, from Jasmine Crockett. The segment that was supposed to be a showcase for progressive talking points was now a highlight reel for Karoline Leavitt. It wasn't even close anymore. But Karoline didn't come for close. She came to finish it. The moment was building. You could feel it, like that slow-motion scene in a movie, right before everything explodes. Jasmine tried again, voice slightly cracking. You Republicans are always talking about freedom, but you're out here banning books, banning women's rights. And that's when Karoline hit the switch. Enough, Karoline said, her tone still sharp, still ice-cold. You don't get to lecture me about freedom. The camera cut close on Karoline's face. No smile. No smirk. Just focused intensity. You scream about banning books, but where were you when Democrats in California tried to ban parents from knowing what's happening in their kids' classrooms? The host shifted uncomfortably, pretending to glance at their notes, pretending they weren't watching career destruction live on air. And you talk about women's rights? Karoline shot back. Tell that to the thousands of girls across this country losing scholarships to biological men because your party refuses to define what a woman even is. Fire. Checkmate. That was the moment. The audience knew it. The comments knew it. The whole country was about to know it. Jasmine sat there stunned, mouth slightly open, eyes darting back and forth like someone trying to find the nearest exit. And Karoline, calm as ever, kept going, because when you've got the truth on your side, you don't stop. Let's stop pretending this is about protecting anyone, she said. This is about control. Your party wants to control what people can say, what they can read, what they can believe. You don't believe in freedom, Jasmine, you believe in obedience. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The did she really just say that kind. The kind that lives on replay clips for years. The host looked like they were about to faint. Jasmine Crockett? She looked like she wanted to melt into that chair and disappear. Twitter was on fire. Bro, that was brutal. Karoline just bodied her on live TV. MSNBC is gonna pretend this never happened. But the clip was already moving fast. It was already heading for conservative media, YouTube shorts, TikTok edits with dramatic music, split screens, bold red text exposed on live TV. Karoline didn't even have to raise her voice. That's what made it hurt more. Because she didn't win this exchange by being the loudest. She won because she was right. This wasn't just about embarrassing Jasmine Crockett anymore. It was about exposing the entire rotten narrative Jasmine was built on. Fear. Control. lies. All of it laid bare for millions to see. And in that one moment, Jasmine Crockett realized the thing every phony politician dreads most: she brought a slogan to a facts fight. And she was losing. Badly. But Karoline wasn't done yet. There was still one more card to play. And what she said next, it didn't just end the debate. It ended the whole illusion. The tension in that studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The hosts sat stiffly, glued to their chair like they were afraid of becoming part of the wreckage. Jasmine Crockett sat motionless, blinking fast, clutching her notes like they were going to save her from drowning. They wouldn't. Because Karoline Leavitt was about to deliver the final blow, not just to Jasmine, but to the entire game the media had been playing for years. And she knew exactly how to do it. She leaned slightly forward, never raising her voice, never breaking that cool, controlled tone that was driving every liberal watching absolutely insane. "You know what the real problem here is, Jasmine?" Karoline asked. "It's not that you disagree with conservatives. Disagreement is healthy. Debate is good. Pause. But what you and your party can't stand, what terrifies you, is that we're not afraid of you anymore." Fireboom. That one line. That single sentence was the moment the illusion collapsed. All the posturing. All the snarky headlines. All the media spin and carefully edited clips they used to use to humiliate conservatives on TV, none of it worked anymore. Because people were finally seeing it for what it was: an act. A show. A scripted performance designed to protect the powerful. And tonight? Karoline Leavitt just ripped the curtain down. "You don't represent the working class," Karoline continued, now fully in command of the entire segment. "You represent the donors, the activist groups, the special interests. That's why you don't answer questions. That's why you shout down dissent. And that's why more Americans, especially young conservatives like me, are standing up and calling it out." Fire the chat was a riot at this point. "We've been waiting for this. This is what courage looks like." Liberal media in shambles right now. Even people who didn't normally comment were typing W. It was a win. A live, public W in front of millions. Jasmine tried one last time, but her words came out hollow. This isn't what democracy looks like." Karoline raised an eyebrow. That was it. That was her final mistake. With surgical precision, she delivered the last cut. "This isn't democracy?" Karoline said, smiling now for the first time all night. "No, Jasmine. This is exactly what democracy looks like: an American citizen standing up to a corrupt system, on live TV, telling the truth no matter how uncomfortable it makes you." Silence. Nothing left to say. Nothing left to spin. No clever tweets could save this one. The illusion was gone. The conservative audience watching at home? They weren't just entertained, they were energized. They were fired up. Because for the first time in a long time, they saw one of their own not just survive the media machine, but defeat it. Jasmine Crockett sat still, blinking, staring at the floor. The host muttered something about running out of time and tried to close the segment politely. Too late. The clip was already on its way to going viral. And Karoline Leavitt? She didn't just win the debate, she exposed the whole game. As the cameras faded, and the stunned silence of that studio settled in, one thing was clear: the era of conservatives apologizing on national TV was over. And Karoline Leavitt just proved why she's called one of the most dangerous women to liberal media, because she fights with facts, not feelings. Like what you saw. Hit subscribe and stick around. We're just getting started.